Welcome back, friends. Today I'm going to be painting something in my favorite art journal, except bigger. That's right. So my friend Rosi, who makes these amazing sketchbooks and has an Etsy store where she sells these, she sent me her bigger size. This is a 9 by 12 inch watercolor journal with Arches paper. So let me show you these journals side by side. This is the first one that Rosi sent me, and it's a 6 by 8 inch journal. It's all cold pressed Arches paper. I've already been filling the pages and having so much fun with it. There's just so much to be said for working in a journal that has top quality paper. So this was the first one I did. I made a video about this. You can check it out right over here. I've done landscapes. I've done figurative art. I usually take this with me to my Wednesday night painting sessions where we get to paint from life. The theme with this journal, I'm trying to fill all the pages with paintings I've done from life. Portrait of my son and a self-portrait with a mirror, a rose from life. Those are my Mother's Day flowers. This is from Figure Group. This is the Flatiron Mountains in Boulder. And this is my most recent one that I did while I was painting with my twin sister. So yeah, I'm gonna keep this journal all paintings from life, I think. Now with this larger size, since it's a little bit bigger and heavier and probably not as easy to take with you when you're plein air painting and packing for urban sketching, I may end up doing a lot of paintings in here that are actually from photos at my studio desk, but I'll probably take it with me plein air painting too. Who knows? So the wonderful thing about these journals is that she customizes them. They all have whatever colors you choose for the bindings, and pink is my favorite color, so the bindings are pink. These rubber bands are really important because they're going to help hold your pages down when you start to paint. As you'll see, she cuts all the papers from rolls, so that's why they're all bent or a little bit curved like this. But as you begin to fill your journal, they will flatten out over time. With each journal, she includes a little note that explains how to use the rubber bands to hold your pages down. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to take one of my rubber bands for this very first page. Also, you can paint both sides of the paper, by the way. That's another added perk. And that's what I'll be doing to start my painting. The other fun thing about this particular journal is that this half of the journal is Arches cold pressed, and the second half of the journal is all Arches hot pressed. So she asked me if I wanted a variety of papers, and I said yes. So we're doing cold pressed and hot pressed. Hot pressed is smoother. It's a little easier to do more of an illustrative style with that. And the cold pressed is fabulous for all my favorite wet and wet techniques. So I'm so excited to fill the pages of this new journal. I've chosen a photo of my daughter to start this very first page with, so I hope you guys like it. To start with the sketch, I used a mechanical pencil to freehand draw the portrait. When working from photos, I find that it's very helpful to match the aspect ratios of your reference photo to your paper. You can crop and adjust your image ahead of time in Photoshop or using any other photo editing program. Having the same aspect ratio allows you to use the negative space surrounding the figure to correctly judge measurements between key points. For example, the distance from the top of the page to the top of the head. Freehand sketching can be challenging, but it definitely gets easier with regular practice. As I sketch the head, I'm constantly making little visual measurements, comparing the length and width of one plane to another, checking my angles, and trying to break things down into simple shapes rather than thinking of it as a face. You can see me using my fingers to compare distances in order to get correct proportions. If this is something you struggle with, using a grid method can really help break the drawing into more manageable pieces. And another hack is drawing upside down, since this tends to help you use more of the left side of your brain and just see things more objectively. Now, to help protect the white of the paper, I decided to use some masking fluid or drawing gum to paint over the areas that need to remain pure white, especially this sunlit spot on the top of her head and on the back of her skirt, and some of those flyaway hairs. I use a rubber brush for the larger masked areas and a tiny liner brush for some of those small hair details. Once your masking fluid is completely dry, you can start the painting. I did a little test study here on another piece of paper, just trying out some colors ahead of time, and so I'll be referring back to that throughout the painting. I begin with the background using the wet and wet technique, applying clean water to the paper so that it prepares it for a nice soft dispersion of paint. I'm using HANSA Yellow Light and GAMBOGE Nova for the brilliantly lit up background. I also try to avoid some of those sunspots in the background. This is considered that bokeh effect, where the background creates this blurry circular light effect. And you can also use other methods to approach this, but I like to use negative painting whenever possible for the purest look in my watercolors. Now for the first layer on the head, I'm actually using transparent orange. This is a Winsor & Newton color. It's one of my favorite colors for skin tones. And I'm just avoiding some of the highlights on the cheek and on the tip of the nose, but pretty much just painting a flat wash, wet on wet, into the face and into the hair and in areas of the hair that are a little more warm colored. I also use a little bit of yellow ochre in the hair. Now for good color harmony, I want to make sure I'm using the same colors on every part of her body, including the arm. So my first layer here is wet and wet, transparent orange. Water it down a little bit more as the arm turns towards the light. You want it to look like a rounded shape, where you have darker edges beneath the dress and a highlight right in the center of the arm and shoulder. As the skin is drying, you can go back into the background and do more with your colors. I re-wet the background with clean water, and then I go in with a combination of Hooker's green and burnt sienna for this earthy sap green tone. And I'm going in and painting these suggestions of pine sprigs. I'm also including some of that transparent orange, painting in a circular motion and adding some really loose washy brush strokes suggesting branches and foliage. I do one side at a time because it's a fairly large painting. It's 9 by 12 inches and my paper dries out really fast. So this ensures that I'll get the best results without worrying about my paper drying prematurely. On the right side, I'm applying a little bit of a combination of ultramarine and burnt sienna for that little gray tone right there, and plenty of transparent orange and some more Hooker's green to help balance out the composition. I try to keep it really loose, but also intentional. All of my shapes need to make sense and really point towards the figure as being the focal point in the painting. Here I'm using a scrubber brush to do some more bokeh effect, just gently lifting out some of the paint using a damp, clean brush. And once that's dry, I can go back into the face and head and apply more layers of paint. With skin tones especially, it's really helpful to use the wet and wet effect because your paint is going to just soften and blend so much more easily for you. I'm trying out a new violet tone on my palette. This is Daniel Smith QUINACRIDONE Purple in the skin, and I absolutely love this color. It's beautiful and transparent and rather a reddish purple, so it works beautifully in skin tones. I also love to use ultramarine blue. It's one of my favorite colors for cool skin tones on fair skin. You can see me dropping it in here into the hair and on the arm, and a little more of this QUINACRIDONE purple in the shadow tones. Now to balance out the warmth of the painting, I'm adding in some GAMBOGE Nova, really bright pops of yellow in the arm and in the head. To help add a lifelike element, drop in pops of red, like in the cheeks, the eyes, the nose, the lips, and the ears. This is going to really help it feel vibrant and lifelike. I'm constantly softening and using the wet and wet technique to make sure that those skin tones are smooth and transitioning easily into each other without any abrupt, harsh lines. So you can see me constantly re-wetting the area and then adding more and more layers. You always want to make sure that the previous layer is completely dry before you add a new layer wet on wet. I'm adding a second layer to the arm, once again starting with that transparent orange, dropping in more ultramarine blue, and then deepening the shadow just beneath the dress. I'm adding some of that QUINACRIDONE purple into the hair and a little hint of turquoise blue. Blonde hair and shadow is a little bit hard to nail down as far as the colors go, so just do your best. Ask yourself, does it need more red, does it need more yellow, or does it need more blue? And this will help a lot with the decision making when you're choosing colors for your portraits. On her back, I want to boost the color a little more, so I'm adding some orange and a grayish shadow. And then for her dress, the areas that are deep in shadow, I'm using pure indigo, and as it's turning more towards the light, I'm adjusting to an ultramarine blue, constantly shifting my values, adding more water where I need it to be lighter, and using more pigment pulled directly from the palette for those darker areas. This is painted wet and dry, but I have to work quickly so that I can resolve any hard edges and make sure that those don't form. For her pink skirt, I'm using a combination of alizarin crimson and a little bit of my purple, and then I'm adding some more dark shadow tones to the arm once again. Watercolor always dries lighter, so you can expect that you'll have to add several layers to get to the values that you're looking for. I'm increasing that shadow crease along her spine and adding some more blue tones to her hair. Once that's dry, I can remove the masking fluid using clean, dry fingers. And with the masking fluid gone, you can see that it's fairly rough. I'm going to have to tighten everything up and really adjust my shapes just to make them more refined and polished looking. So I'm adding some more transparent brown oxide, yellow ochre, and whatever colors I need to tighten up those strands of hair. I'm also going to be using an opaque white paint. This is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. With a tiny liner brush, I'm adding some more of those pure flyaway strands of hair, really adding lots of beautiful detail. I'm also adding a little more skin tone to her cheek using a circular motion and gently softening. and some strands of hair overlapping her dress and coming just behind. All of this is lending some beautiful detail to the focal point. I do remove the tape, and there are a few more touch-ups I want to do before I can call it finished. I'm going to add one more final layer of transparent orange to her face and just another pop of orange on her hair and her arm, because we want to balance out those pops of orange that are in her armpit and along her neck. So this is lending some color harmony. Now I'm using turquoise blue and a 1/2 inch flat wash brush to add some vibrant, bold brush strokes to the background. Now, while these look messy and rather random, they're there with the purpose and intention of pointing towards the focal point. I add my signature and call it finished. Well, that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you really liked what you saw and really liked this journal, show ArtsiRosi some love and head over to her Etsy page and get one of these journals for yourself. You're gonna love it. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check that out. And if you want to paint step by step with me this portrait of my daughter, the full-length version of this tutorial is available through my Watercolor Mastery membership. I'll also leave a link in the description for that. You can join my online school where you'll have access to over 140 real-time tutorials like this one. There's also a comprehensive course just for beginners if you're just getting started with watercolor. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.